Close your eyes and let yourself be carried on a journey above the clouds, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary and faith finds wings. Captain Michael Harrington had flown combat missions over foreign deserts, piloted F-16s through tracer fire and explosions that bloomed like false stars. Back then, he had prayed desperately and often. But after returning to Colorado, after burying his wife and raising 2 children alone, faith had slipped through his fingers like sand. At 45, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who had mastered the sky. His mother's rosary still lay in a drawer at home, untouched for years. To Michael, faith was a memory, not a lifeline. On this ordinary Friday afternoon, Flight 227 from Denver to Phoenix was just another routine leg. The Boeing 737 hummed with the steady rhythm of engines built to devour miles. In the cabin, families settled into their seats. A grandmother from New Mexico fingering rosary beads, a tech executive tapping his laptop, college athletes with earbuds, a nervous truck driver from Oklahoma taking his first flight ever. To everyone aboard, it was just another flight. But sometimes the ordinary disguises the extraordinary. At 33,000 feet, the world outside the cockpit was an endless canvas of blue. The Rockies faded behind them, replaced by desert plateaus stretching toward Arizona. Everything looked steady, predictable, the kind of flight that lulled both passengers and crew into routine. First Officer Brian Campbell, young and optimistic, leaned forward as something caught his eye. "Captain," he said softly, his casual tone shifting. "Do you see that?" Michael followed his gaze. At first, it was just a cluster of clouds ahead, brightened by the setting sun. But as seconds passed, light and shadow began arranging themselves into something that made his breath catch. The brightness curved into the outline of a figure, delicate, robed, unmistakably feminine. She seemed to be leaning forward, arms slightly extended, as though watching, waiting. The light surrounding her pulsed gently, like breath, like presence. Michael's hands shook on the yoke. He blinked hard, expecting the image to dissolve, but it held. His training screamed to catalog, analyze, dismiss, but this refused dismissal. Somewhere in his memory, his mother's voice echoed from childhood mass. "Look to her. She will never leave you." Brian tried to rationalize. "Could be sunlight reflection," he murmured, adjusting the cockpit visor. But when he looked again, the outline was clearer than before. That's a woman's face." Silence filled the cockpit, heavier than any turbulence. The camera mounted above the windshield, installed only for routine recording, captured it all frame by frame. A luminous outline of a woman hovering in the sky, watching them with eyes of infinite tenderness. In the passenger compartment, a child's gasp broke the ordinary hum. Row 14, window seat. A little girl pressed her face against the glass, crayons scattering to the floor. "Mama, look," she whispered. Her mother leaned over, expecting mountains or sunset clouds. Instead, she froze. The figure in the sky was unmistakable. Robed, serene, luminous in ways sunlight alone couldn't explain. Words spread like ripples on water. A businessman abandoned his laptop. College athletes pulled out earbuds. The grandmother's rosary trembled in her hands as her lips moved in silent prayer. A strange hush settled over the cabin. Even crying babies quieted. Flight attendants exchanged uncertain glances, having trained for emergencies but never for this. The Oklahoma truck driver, white-knuckling his first flight, stared through tears he didn't expect. "It's her," he whispered, thinking of his wife in a Phoenix hospital. Somehow, he felt peace settle over him like a blanket. Phones emerged, capturing shaky footage. A college athlete went live on TikTok, his usual bravado gone. "I don't even go to church, man. But this is real." Within the aluminum shell hurtling through sky, strangers became a congregation. Some prayed in Spanish, others in English. Many who hadn't prayed in years found words rising from forgotten places in their hearts. As if summoned by their awe, the sky darkened. Thunderheads rose without warning, towering into their flight path. The seat belt sign chimed urgently as turbulence struck. The aircraft jolted violently, Coffee spilled, laptops snapped shut, children cried out. In the cockpit, Michael's jaw clenched as radar lit up with an unexpected storm cell. Unpredicted, impossible. That wasn't on the weather update, Brian muttered, running through emergency checklists. The plane lurched again. Oxygen masks rattled overhead but didn't deploy. Panic simmered in the cabin, until something extraordinary happened. Instead of screams, voices rose in prayer. Catholic, Protestant, whispered pleas from lips that had forgotten how to pray. The young mother clutched her toddler. "Stay with me, Lord." The college athlete folded his shaking hands. "Please, just get us through this." In the cockpit, Michael felt the technical storm, wind shear, pressure changes, instrument warnings. But beneath the chaos, he heard something quieter. Asterisk, don't be afraid. I am with you. Asterisk. His trembling eased. His hands steadied on the controls. Then, as if carved by invisible hands, the storm opened. A corridor formed through the thunderheads. Narrow but clear, framed by walls of lightning yet filled with golden sunlight. Michael guided the aircraft into the passage. The turbulence ceased. The plane steadied. In the cabin, terror gave way to shaky laughter, then to the deeper silence of gratitude. The grandmother whispered to her seatmate, "She brought us through." Phoenix Sky Harbor's runway lights shimmered like scattered jewels against the desert dusk. As wheels touched asphalt, spontaneous applause erupted, passengers clapping not just for the landing, but for safe passage through something beyond understanding. But outside the aircraft doors, another storm waited. News had traveled faster than the plane itself. Reporters clustered at baggage claim, cameras ready, hungry for the story that was already viral. Social media exploded. The college athlete's live stream crossed 1 million views. Hashtag Mary in the Clouds trended worldwide. Cable news panels debated meteorologists versus theologians. Late-night comedians made jokes, but behind the laughter lay fascination. Scientists offered explanations: pareidolia, light refraction, mass suggestion. Dr. Karen Whitmore from the University of Colorado smiled politely on camera. "Clouds are water droplets. Sunlight scatters. Our brains interpret patterns. This is entirely normal." But faith leaders heard different music. Father Daniel Lopez in Phoenix told his packed Sunday congregation, "Not every sign from heaven comes with thunder. Sometimes it's as gentle as a mother's gaze in the sky." Beyond the chaos of reporters and debates, past the bustling baggage claim, stood a small interfaith chapel. That night, its doors opened to a quiet stream of passengers from Flight 227. The grandmother from New Mexico was first, slipping into a pew with her rosary, whispering thanks. The Oklahoma truck driver followed, unsure how to kneel but needing to try. The young mother balanced her toddler beside her, whispering gratitude to whoever was listening. College athletes shuffled in, still in team hoodies, phones finally put away. Even the tech executive who had lectured about light scattering entered quietly. Sitting in the back row, something softened in his face. No one spoke above a whisper. The chaos outside, headlines, arguments, viral videos, melted into stillness here. Strangers who hours before were just seat numbers were now bound by shared witness. The flight attendant lit a candle, its flame painting their faces with warm light. The grandmother began humming Ave Maria, and others joined, not all knowing the words, but echoing the melody that seemed to weave their hearts together. For one impossible moment, divisions disappeared. Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, agnostic, all meant nothing. There were no debates, no explanations, only gratitude and the instinct to bow before mystery. Days passed and Flight 227 faded from headlines. But for those who had been there, it remained a dividing line in their lives, before and after. Captain Michael Harrington drove to St. Mary's Parish the following Sunday, parking beneath the stone bell tower he hadn't seen since his wife's funeral. Kneeling in the familiar pew, he had no polished prayers, just whispered gratitude. "Thank you for not leaving me alone." The Oklahoma truck driver sat beside his wife's hospital bed, clasping her fragile hand. "We're going to be okay," he told her, and for the first time he meant it completely. The college athlete returned to his campus chapel, staying longer each visit. He didn't have the language of faith yet, but carried quiet certainty that he wasn't alone. Even the skeptical tech executive found himself changed. He called his son that week, apologizing for years of distance. "I don't know what happened up there, but it reminded me life's too short to live closed off." Across America, the story sparked conversations that lasted long after the cameras stopped rolling. Families debated at dinner tables. Friends argued in coffee shops. Churches reported unfamiliar faces in their pews. Some curious, others hungry for something the sky had awakened. Scientists could explain water droplets and light refraction, but they couldn't explain why hardened skeptics whispered prayers at 33,000 feet, or why strangers in an airport chapel felt like family. Perhaps it was natural phenomenon, perhaps divine intervention. The truth may never satisfy every debate, but one truth remained unshakable. For a brief moment above the Rockies, heaven leaned close and an entire plane full of strangers heard the same whisper. "You are not alone." In the end, maybe that whisper was enough. Maybe it was everything. Asterisk as you drift towards sleep tonight, remember that even in our most ordinary moments, driving to work, boarding a plane, sitting in traffic, grace can break through clouds both literal and metaphorical. Rest now in the peace of knowing you two are never truly alone. Asterisk. Asterisk if this story touched something in your heart. Share it with someone who needs reminding that miracles still break through our everyday skies. Sometimes heaven speaks not in thunder, but in the gentle recognition that we're all passengers on the same journey home. Asterisk.